Cupcakes and trauma. What do those two things have to do with one another? Cupcakes and trauma. Yesterday, I was listening to a podcast interview I had given on another podcast called Kingdom Crossroads Podcast. And I heard myself share something I had never shared before and forgotten I had said. And it was about cupcakes and trauma. I thought it was a brilliant illustration, and I wanted to make sure that I remembered it and shared it with you because it had to come from God, because I think it's really awesome. I was asked, what's the difference between childhood trauma and trauma in adults? People have a hard time with that, because when you're an adult and you look back at your childhood, you look at your childhood through your adult eyes. And we tend to diminish it. We frame it through our adult brain. Sometimes we get on our case. We attack ourselves. Why weren't you stronger? Why didn't you just get over it? Why did that hurt so bad? Or whatever other negative thing that we're excessively hard on ourselves because we're looking at it through the eyes of our adult brain. But we weren't an adult when we were a child. We understand English with that. But how do we process that? How do we visualize it? It was really different because we can't go back and be 5 or 6 or 10 or 12 or 16 again. We are the age we are right now. And in the past, I've encouraged people to look at it by finding someone in your life who was the age or is the age that you were when a certain situation took place. And imagine that child going through what you went through at that age. When I think that's extremely helpful. I've done it myself. But this cupcake thing, just really, you'll get it in your head. Like when they say pink elephant, what happens? You get a picture of a pink elephant in your head. So the difference between childhood trauma and adult trauma is like cupcakes. When you make cupcakes and you put them in the little paper thing and you put them in the oven, they're supposed to be in there for a certain amount of time before they're done, right? So if you take a cupcake that's all done and you drop it on the floor, it might break. If it's in that little paper container, it might not break. It might be just fine. So that's kind of like an adult brain. If you take the paper off, it doesn't have any support, it might break. So that's a picture of adult trauma. But if you take a cupcake out of the oven before it's done, if it's been in there for 2 minutes, it's been in there for 5 minutes, it's been in there for 10 minutes, those are all different time frames. And if you take that not cooked cupcake and you drop that on the ground, it's going to splatter. It's going to fall apart. It can't do anything else because it's not done yet. Especially if you had just put it in the oven for like 2 minutes or 5 minutes, it's still all liquid and it's going to splat all over the ground. Well, that childhood trauma is also called developmental trauma. A child's brain is like a cupcake that hasn't been in the oven long enough to be done. And so that's a really good picture of a big difference between childhood trauma and adult trauma. The brain is not done as a child. It does not have the tools. It does not have the knowledge. It is incapable of behaving like an adult brain because it isn't one. And sometimes we just need these illustrations to help us really get it so that you're not so hard on yourself. What happened to you when you were 5? What happened to you when you were 8? Or when you were in 6th grade? Or when you were in maybe even 12th grade? Maybe you were 18. They say the brain is not done till it's like 21 or something. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a scientist. 18-year-olds think they know everything, but they don't. they still are not done yet. There's so much left to learn and to grow. I'm 64 years old and I still have a lot to learn. There's always something new to learn, but my brain is an adult brain. So I wanted to share that illustration with you. Cupcakes and trauma. An uncooked cupcake dropped on the ground will make a big mess. A child who is subjected to traumatic things will be like a cupcake being dropped on the ground. Unless maybe someone catches it before it hits the ground, then you could save it. That's what good support around a child who's going through something really hard can do. Can save that cupcake from splattering all over the ground. So there are ways to mitigate it. But I wanted that illustration for you so you can see there's a huge difference between childhood trauma and adult trauma. So be kind to yourself and look at your life and process it in light of what age you were, and be kind to yourself and love yourself from Survive to Thrive. You want help? Contact me. I would love to give you help so you will thrive in life because I love you. Mwah. Till next time.